The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Spellbreakers. Tonight's episode of Spellbreakers is brought to you in part by our friends at Benson Honey Farms. Oh yeah, we love Benson Honey Farms. Hello to everybody this evening. Hello, everybody. Benson Honey Farms. Benson's Honey is excited to be back on Badlands Media with their honey harvest straight from the Nebraska farm. While they've been busy working to improve our state politics from the ground up, they've never forgotten the importance of sharing the best honey around. Catch up with Mo on the first episode of America First Stories right here on Badlands Media. Did you know honey isn't a sweet treat? It's nature's medicine, perfect for alleviating allergies, soothing upset stomachs, and as a delicious natural sweetener. I agree with all of these things. Benson's honey is never heated, ensuring you receive it in its pure, raw form, full of natural goodness. At Benson Honey Farms, quality and purity is a top priority, and they're committed to providing the finest honey from hive to home. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/honey and use promo code Badlands for 20% on your purchase. Benson Honey Farms, savor the authentic taste of Nebraska and support the America First business. Follow on Facebook at Benson Honey Farms and TikTok at Mo Benson Honey. Mo Benson Honey, please. Okay. Oh, that's their TikTok handle. Mo Benson Honey with Mo with an E. All right. And we're also sponsored tonight by Scales Gear. All right. Wear your freedom proudly and celebrate America in style with Scales Freedom Collection. Scales offers a line of long sleeve ocean-inspired patriotic prints. Every piece is designed to keep you cool, protected, and proud to be an American. Shop now at badlandsmedia.tv/scales and enter the code Badlands at checkout for 20% off your next purchase. Okay, cool gear, Scales. All right. Really proud to have them as a sponsor tonight. Tonight's show is going to be, I think, a little chill. You know, the post Gart thing. I see some of you coming in on the chats and some of the people I met at Gart. It was really good to meet all of you at Gart 11 there in Nashville. Really had a good time. Really just loved meeting all of you that I met there. Loved meeting the hosts. There are a lot of hosts, Badlands hosts I hadn't met up till now, and it was great to finally meet all of them and connect a person. Not like I didn't see their face because we're all here online, but it really matters when you see somebody in person, right? It really changes the way you connect with them. And so it was really good to finally connect with a lot of the Badlands hosts. I saw some of them at the first Gart back in Chandler, Arizona, right here in the Phoenix area, but that was 3 years ago, and I hadn't had a chance to go to a Gart since then. And this time I just wanted to make the best use of it. I wasn't quite over the recent respiratory gunk I had. And so it sort of kept me a little bit low key. And while I was there, I was afraid I was getting sick again. Saturday night, I was up in the hotel room there in the Marriott, and really I was wondering whether I'd be able to even get up and function on Sunday, but it turned out to be okay. And just the idea of seeing all of you really made it worthwhile to participate. But this week I have been a little bit low energy, just still recovering this stubborn bug. I don't know if any of you else out there had this junk. It was in the lungs for a while and was coughing, and I've gotten over that, but I still just feel like a little fuzzy headed and a little bit lower energy than normal, and taking naps and all this. So something really stubborn, and not really enjoying it, hoping it'll go away at least by the next Gart. You get to be a certain age, you wonder if anything you get's going to go away. You're always like, oh God, that was just temporary. So here we are. We have a new opening, as you saw. I'm sure you've been seeing it all week, and they rolled it out, I think, last week with all of people sitting in the rain and all that. And I think I sort of look like a werewolf. They really caught me at my most wild man looking there, I think, with the hair and all that. And but hey, what is it? I got a haircut for Gart because I was like, oh, I can't go in looking like that. But yeah, whatever. I do look like that sometimes, so it's not so bad. I was wondering, they have me reading a book there at the beginning. It looks to me like this, but I don't know if they caught some footage of me. It looks to me like Gravitation and Cosmology by Steve Weinberg, who was one of my teachers at the University of Texas, a really great physicist and a great man. So I don't know whether that's that or whether that's just AI making up a book. I don't know. But if it's this book, I'd be proud that but I don't ever remember reading it on the air and opening it until right now. So we did a couple physics episodes recently. Some science episode. I really wanted to dig in and find the roots back with science, but I think we're pivoting back away. This week's just going to got a couple news items and some interesting things to talk about, but I'll check out the chat, see what's on everybody's mind tonight coming in here. Great new intro, says Trumpet. Yeah. It's great. Okay. Yeah, I'll go with it. If you guys like it, yeah, I like it too. You guys, I do look a little wild there, like I'm just living on some seaside cave. It looks like a Greek hermit, like I'm like up on one of those mountains in Greece or something, which is good. That's not bad. I do have my microphone this week a little bit different. I rearranged. I got my third bookcase up there. That's my major accomplishments for the week. We're redoing my room and almost preparing an episode. Yes. Okay. See you all. I see that. I see a lot of friends here. People saying they met me. Yeah, good. Cloud Topper. Hello, Mrs. Rhea Freedom Fighter. Hello to you. Hello, Sammy the Squirrel, lurking tonight. Good for you, Sammy. Maybe I need to pull my microphone a little bit more over like that. Okay. Mrs. Rhea Freedom Fire. Hungarian election. Orban's out. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Hungarian elections. I put the title in there. That wasn't my original title. I was like, what am I going to do about this week? I'm a little bit lower energy, and we did a bunch of serious science. Let's just have a little bit more chill this evening. And so we're going to talk about elections in Hungary. What's with that? Some of you may be wondering why you would want to talk about the elections in Hungary, but they really have a lot to do with the world situation right now, and with Trump and our domestic politics more than you'd think. So we'll get to that in a minute. Ross Shark lives. Good to see you. Definitely had a definitely good meeting you. EC was here. Good to see you. Leslie Bayer, Katie Rose 23, Grace Monkey 58. Hello, Eleanor 2000. Good evening, wonderful Spellbreakers. It was great to meet you in Gart, Nashville, Matt, and enjoyed your panels. Thank you. Thank you. Tonight's episode, which is Hungarian elections, it sort of dovetails off of something I brought up in one of the panels. So, which really worked out weird with the timing, I think. So, but that's life, Sometimes you get the timing. D Patriot 1776. Good to meet you, Leslie Bayer. Dig it, Rockstar. Get shit done. Okay. CK Ruthoff. Love the Viewmasters. I need to get those out for the grands again. Yeah, when I think about America and my best memories of childhood, I think about how much my desire to go out and see so much of America was inspired by my grandparents, who were grandfather born in 1912, grandmother born 1915, and they lived to see a lot. And I, of course, didn't meet them until much later when they were in their 50s and 60s. And they lived long lives, and I got to know them very well. But just rooting around in their house in Ames, Iowa, digging out the things that they had collected on their trips really inspired me, especially to go out and see America, and including those Viewmaster reels they had in their house. Now, those are the ones that I show in my intro. Those aren't the ones I got from there. My sister has, I think, the ones that we recovered from their house before they left and went to assisted living. But really gave me this curiosity about what's out there in America, and a love for America and exploring it that's never left me, and it's served me very well my whole life, and really has given me a love of this country in a deep way. All the people out there, and a desire, for example, to visit all the 50 states, which I have done at this point in my life. I finally got to all 50 when I was 49 years old. Hawaii being the last one. All things, but and just a desire to know every state out there, to know what every state, what the people are like and everything, not just to set foot in there, but to somehow know it, and in that way to know America. And what a gift to be able to do that. I've been so lucky to be able to do that, and now I'm on my, I'm going to every state again, and so that's good. So Nashville, the first time I was ever in Tennessee, but I almost got killed in a car wreck in Nashville, of all things. That was 1988, and I often think about when I go there, because I came really close to losing my life. A friend was driving, and we were looking. He had grown up in Nashville, and we'd driven all the way across the country. He picked me up in Oregon. Where I was going to college, and he wanted to drive to Washington, D.C., and for various reasons. We both had gone to college in D.C. together. And he picked me up there, and we drove all the way across the country. It was a great epic road trip. We stopped maybe 10 days along the way, and camping and staying with people. And it was such an incredible trip of our youth. And we got to Nashville, and we were staying with some people, and we were looking for the house he grew up in. And we were driving down the street, and we went into a dead end somewhere in Nashville, not far from where we were staying with Gart. And he was driving a 1974 Dodge Dart that his family had in high school. Great car, those slant six engines. And but it was a dead end, and he turned around. He came back to the intersection, and he pulled out into the intersection. And the next thing I knew, just wham, just this loud noise, because this furniture truck had creamed the side of the car, and it just slammed into the whole engine compartment where the engine was. And if it just been if he put on the brakes just a slight bit later, I know I wouldn't have made it out of that crash. I would have been killed, just because it was just smashed, took off the whole front of the car basically, and it spun the car around. That's what I remember, is the car just rotating in place. And we both got out and walked away. Unfortunately, that was the end of that road trip. But those tragic things of youth. But I think about that when I go to Nashville because anytime you survive a close scrape with death, you think about, well, maybe that would have been the end of my life. Everything I've lived since then could have been it's sort of extra in a way. We have those kind of moments. And so I think about that when in Nashville, I reflected on that a little bit, but not too much because I've been back since then. And, you can only reflect on these things so much, but it's good to think about your mortality. I had a great time there. I don't know if any of you went downtown and saw like anything in downtown. Jessica and I did that 3 years ago, 4 years ago for the first Thread Fest, which the conference that Patrick Gunnels was putting on, and I actually helped him organize that one, and was the MC of it, a co-MC, and that was a lot of fun, and that was out at Opryland area there. And, but we went into that. We rented a no, did we rent a car? I think we did. Yeah, or we just took an Uber, and Jessica would know. We went downtown, went to the Country Music Hall of Fame, walked around downtown there. So sort of did that already. Didn't feel like we had to do that. I was just there by myself this time. I didn't feel like I had to do that this time. But I hope if you were there and you got a chance to do that, that's really great. Nashville's one of those cities. It's sort of a bachelorette party city. It's like the female Las Vegas, I think you could call it. And, really, but it's got sort of a more safe for women vibe than going out in the Las Vegas Strip, maybe a little less rough, a little bit more feminine, safe, I think, in Nashville. So, yeah, I was thinking, there's a lot of young men now in this day and age who are having a tough time, like making contact with young women, and in a way that was I felt it was pretty easy for my generation, just because it was sort of seemed more natural just to talk to people in real life. It's sort of harder to talk to people in real life now. I said, well, what you need to well, if I was going to tell a young man at college age, you want to be around women and sort of get to know. It's like go to Nashville and become one of those guys that drives one of those pedal cab bars around, where they because half your clientele is going to be a whole bachelorette party in there, and they're going to be pretty rowdy, and you're going to get to see a side of young women that you probably wouldn't see otherwise. So, that's my sage advice from an old man about that. But that's just this time though. I stayed in my hotel, went across to the Parthenon while I was there to see the the first night there, I just grabbed some Wendy's there from the front of the hotel and walked over to the Parthenon and watched not the first night, but the second night, I guess, and watched the splashdown of Artemis, which was going on. That was fun to have that going on during Gart, right? You know. So anyway, a really great time, but really getting to meet all of you was really the highlight. So we have a $10 Rumble rant. Thank you from Escape the Matrix 91. Hey, Matt, it's Evan. Hello, Evan. Yeah, speaking of young men on their way to good things, I can tell you are one. It was awesome meeting you and spending a while talking to you. You have the best stories. You're the man. Okay. So, yeah, I did get some feedback. You're a good storyteller. So tonight, I think, I'm sort of in storyteller mode tonight because I can just sort of rattle off things from memory sometimes. They're sort of like the Nashville story about, the car wreck. And man, that road trip, I could spend the whole time talking about that one road trip. Every road trip to me is like a gem of an experience. So that was when I was 24, and that was a great one with my best friend at the time. Ones with your best friends are great. So he was the one driving the car. He's still a good friend of mine. But you should when you're young, you should do a road trip with your friends. Like it's almost like a movie plot. And it was really great. But I'm not going to tell that story tonight. Maybe some other time. Tonight, I'm going to tell a different story because so what was I going to talk about this week? Well, one of the things I did want to mention in addition to so thank you, Evan. Thank you. I know you're Escape the Matrix. Thank you so much. So yes. There you go. I love it when people come in the chat and say hi to each other too. It really gives me a pleasure to know that that people come here and then they interact with each other in the chat. I love that. I love when people are out there. Leslie Bayer says, my 23-year-old daughter is on a bachelorette weekend for a college roommate this weekend. Yes. So, you know, maybe bachelorette parties are sustaining the economy right now. I think maybe. I don't know. They're very popular, and it seems like, it's sort of, you know, there are these surveys coming out, and it's like, oh, young women don't even like young men anymore, and I was watching a video about that today, and it's like, at least there's still bachelorette parties, that's a reason to still get married, I guess. Did you Patriot 1776? Did you see that New Jersey 11 went to a Commie Squad member in yesterday's election? Oh, that sounds bad. Yeah, we're going to be up and down with the elections, aren't we? So we'll talk about the Hungarian ones tonight. But I did want to mention I was actually going to do the show about something else differently, because I just wanted to say that I know a lot of us have been a little choppy in our understanding of the direction of MAGA and Trump lately because of the war. Like, maybe this may not apply to all of you, but this idea of, what is this war about? Why are we doing this? What's Trump's objective? Does he have multiple objectives where he's like trying to develop a narrative that's a fake narrative to fool people, and then there's the real things he's doing? I think a lot of us have been going around and around about that, and people talked about that at Gart quite a bit. And I have to admit, I've been one of those who's been sort of confused about the war, about what's going on, and to the point where I've actually wondered, is this still the Trump we know? Are we still on the track that I felt pretty confident about since Trump first started running, and after he got elected, and following the wise voices on Twitter and saying, "No, he knows what he's doing." And that's been my mindset all along, but I have to say that I had moments where I was wondering, is this really part of the plan? What's going on? This war in Iran, and I found myself a little bit confused, and maybe you did too, about how to think about this. And and even in Badlands, at Gart, we had some pretty contentious discussions among people about this, especially in regard to the Israel component. And you saw JB White, my good friend JB White, and Ash, especially, really at odds. And they like each other, they like each other, but they really are difference of opinion. And JB stands at a great difference of opinion to a lot of people about a lot of this. And so I like to try to figure out where people are coming from. I try to learn from everybody, at least what their perspective, like, what's their, not that I say I'm going to try to agree with everybody, but I try to learn from everybody and their perspective, at least. And so I think a lot. I was watching JB this morning again on his show. He was talking about still being a little bit sick and still recovering. And so I thought, this idea of what is Trump really doing? What's the objective here? This seems like, because it seems like, oh, this is the neocon thing happening again. I lost a friend, a Trump supporting friend early on, who black-pilled right after Trump was first elected because of the dropping the Moab bomb on Syria. I mentioned that. Really good friend of mine, and he was out after that because he's like, this is not what I signed up for, bombing stuff. This is the same old starting wars and all that. And he's pretty much been anti-Trump ever since then. Black-pilled, and he has other problems going on in his life, so I sort of forgive him. But we really haven't talked much since then, because he really couldn't see why that was happening. At the time, I was like, it's just one bomb, and they stopped, pretty much killed Al-Qaeda. Trump said, I'm going to wipe out Al-Qaeda in like 3 months after I get elected, and he pretty much kept that promise. Al-Qaeda gone, because Al-Qaeda was, of course, formed by the CIA and run through the Obama White House and Hillary Clinton's State Department. It was an instrument of terror run by the United States against us to cause trouble, and, so it was fairly easy for Trump to get rid of in that case, and with the help of Saudi Arabia. I really do believe that, Thomas Wichter's view of how that happened, that Saudi Arabia essentially created, combatant commandos, special forces that went in posing as Al-Qaeda, infiltrated Al-Qaeda, and hollowed it out from the inside, basically took out everybody in Al-Qaeda from the inside, and, that seems to be a reasonable model of what happened. But I learned to trust Trump, that was the big thing, right? To trust that he knows what he's doing, and I think I agree with JB about this. I told him this at Gart. I said, "You know what? I don't necessarily agree with, like, your interpretation of Israel and all this, and I have my doubt. I don't know if Israel is a worthy ally of us, or, I don't know if any of those things are true, but I do know this. I do know what it's like, not know, but I do believe it's like, my feeling is that, yes, like JB is always saying, Trump knows way more than us, and there's a reason he has adopted Israel as our number 1 ally in this, and, at least he says that, and that's the rhetoric, that's the plan, and I'm gonna support him on that. That's that and maybe Huckabee's a doofus, maybe he's just, playing a role, I don't know. Um, I've watched Tucker Carlson, and I've enjoyed a lot of his broadcasts, and I think he makes some good points sometimes. I'm not gonna sit here and say that I haven't agreed with him a lot of times. Um, but I guess I gotta be with JB and says that I'm gonna trust Trump on this, that he's and I think that's paid off, because I think over the last week, a lot of the confusion that I had about the war sort of got lifted. I don't know what it's not like anything happened at Gart where I had this aha moment, but for some reason now, I think it's like I started to see things started to come together in a view of this war and how it fits into the big plan of Trump taking down the new world order. I and it's not like you couldn't have told me that a month ago, and I wouldn't have said, "Okay, I can buy that that's probably what's happening." It's just that I couldn't really see it at the time. And you're talking to a guy that's really been into studying the New World Order for 20 plus years now, and yet still I couldn't I had a hard time seeing how the Iran war fit into that fit into that. And now I sort of see how it does. It's sort of now it's like it's obvious to me, and I feel much more at peace. I think it has a lot to do if I wanna say anything, there's that, YouTube channel, Promethean Updates. You might have seen that. I think John mentioned that channel at Gart. He says, Stop sending me stop sending me links to Promethean update videos. I know that it's there, and I see them, but, because John's struggling. John has I don't know, where he is right at the moment, but he has struggled with the war and endorsing it and following Trump in this. And in a way, I understand. In a way, I sort of let myself get confused. Maybe you're like this too. I sort of let myself get confused because I wanna understand people's confusion. Does that make sense? I want to swim in the waters. If people are out there confused about why Trump is doing this, then in some ways, I want to experience that confusion with them. I want to because I want to understand and have compassion for that and understand the way out of it, the way back to understanding it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So I let myself have sometimes more doubt than I might have otherwise, and that's and then I figure out, okay, letting myself be confused about it, how do I get back to a sense of certainty and clarity about this? And for some reason, I was able to find my way back to that. So I mentioned Promethean updates. So what is the gist of there? So I think it's the idea that the Iran war is the kinetic phase, the hot phase of Trump's entire plan right from the beginning that he spelled out in his first inaugural address that basically we are taking down. There's so many words for it, right? I mean, we use the words deep state, but the deep state is just part of it. The globalists, the New World Order, this structure of shadow government that arose in the United States after the end of World War II, that was essentially a revival and continuation of the British Empire, which is a phrase that I think was a key phrase to understand, the British Empire. Matt Ehret, I'm sure you've seen maybe some of his videos. He's Canadian, and he does a bunch of videos about how the British Empire is really still going, and it uses Canada as its outpost to control the US, and I think there's a lot of wisdom there. I was almost gonna do the entire show about that tonight, but I sort of need to just I'm just gonna talk and ramble about a bunch of things, but I think that's my point of view too, in seeing that the City of London, JB uses that phrase, the City of London, that this is the key phase right in this war of taking them down and rebooting the world order. This is it. And it was necessary to do this because Iran, which is a slave state, captive people there, held prisoner, has been used by the British Empire, City of London, New World Order, globalists, the banking order, intelligence, worldwide intelligence community, all of that has been used, and maybe we could just still call it the British Empire. Why not? Has been used as this terrorist state, not just to do the mischief through things like Hezbollah and keep everybody miserable, but really to sit atop the choke point of the Strait of Hormuz, which is the choke point of the entire world economy, and to keep it in their thrall, to charge exorbitant rates for the insurance to access it, and it all benefits them in this giant machine of control, through which all of the rest of their control flows through that. And that we in the United States are the muscle. See, the British Empire is still going, but the Americans that you have, they're pretty much equal partners and have led it in recent years. Although now it's sort of reverting back to a more globalist control. I think under Obama, we really got demoted. America got demoted back down to just being, the American president. He's just a sort of, Obama, come on. Like, so so I begin to see now that this is what the war is about and why it's necessary and why Trump is playing it as it is, which is in this strange way where he's almost like bending over backwards not to damage Iran too much because, this is about liberating the people of Iran. Truly it is, and not in the phony way like Iraq, where we destroy the entire country and leave it, destroyed and its army gone and all this, but really a new order by clearing out the old one, and that it's going to take down the old banking system based on this control and clear the way for independence from it right on the eve of our 250th birthday. JB has been saying this, and I begin to see maybe he's right. Maybe this is what this is about. I'd like to think so. And so all of a sudden now I see the war in a new light. And I have this feeling, it's not just, "Oh, I'm seeing what I wanna see," maybe I am, but I also have this feeling of that, "Oh, this is the right way." Like I have had in the past when I've had confidence in Trump, that, "Oh, he's doing the right thing." My confidence now has been restored in Trump the way it was before the war. It took a little bit for me to see it, even though I knew, "Oh, trust Trump," but now I see it. Now I see it, and all of a sudden, so many things seem like they're happening all at once, don't they? And it seems like a lot could happen in the near future, that this is one of those times in history where that could happen. So I'm very optimistic right now. I don't like I said, I don't know if it was 'cause of Gart that did this. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But and I know that many of you may not share what I just said, but I just wanna say this is where I'm at in this. So, $5, let's see who we got here. D Patriot 1776 gifted 5 subscriptions to Badlands Media. Good for you. All right. Congratulations to those. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Ah, thank you so much. All right. Matt VK, maybe low energy, but this is always better than Jeb Bush. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Sammy the Squirrel says, if you look at all the confirmed facts and filter out the talking points, you see the conflict with Iran clearly. That's why I have my post-weekly factual updates. Yes, you do. And I was going, I mean, I get that, and I always want to put it in the chat, and it slipped my mind again because I always, I want to promote your things. I really appreciate those. I read those, and because I think it's important somebody does that because I don't, there's so much to keep track of. That that having at least one person who does that is very valuable. So yeah, yes, okay. So you posted it there. Thanks, Sammy. Yeah. So Sammy posted a link to his week 7 of his factual update. All right, good. Spetzel, hello. Sammy is a smart fuck. Okay. Fuck. Okay. What proof, Rebel Nader, what proof do we have that the British Empire ever fell? It didn't fall. We just thought it was dismantled. But I don't know. Maybe I'll do a whole show. I'm winding up doing the show about what I originally did. Let's talk. Wait, let's see. What is it? 6:38. We'll get to the Hungarian elections here in a minute because is this part of it? Hungary is part of it. So we just had elections in Hungary. Share the. Yeah, that's a good question though. But maybe we'll pick up there with next week. Like in what sense did the British Empire not fall? So Matt Arrett, he spends a lot of time talking about this, how it's still going. And I agree. I have I have books about this on my shelves, Anglo-American Order, Anglo-American Establishment. Something I'm very fascinated by is this continuation, but I'm beginning to see it even more clearly now. So maybe we'll talk about that next week because it's really important. It's really it really is the subject, and it really is who Trump is fighting and why he's doing all this and what the goal all is. And I think if you don't see that, you're missing out on a lot of why Trump is doing what he's doing and why it's so important that he succeed. So let's see, what do we got here? So we just had elections in Hungary. Of a nation of 10 million people, and it's all of a sudden it's really important. And let's check it out. So if you were at Gart, you may remember that I spoke about Hungary at Gart. It was in the panel about AI. I went off on a sort of a tangent story where I was talking about, we're entering this age of AI, and so I took people back. I said, let's go back to 1989, and there were a couple big things that happened that year. There was the invention of the World Wide Web, which was not in August as I thought, but it was in March. But that's okay. In August, definitely was when we did have the beginning of the end of the Iron Curtain in August of 1989. When there was a picnic at the Hungarian-Austrian border, which was part of the Iron Curtain at the time. And I guess what happened, I was actually reading this in the New York Times. So let's just go back here. This is pretty cool. I went back and looked at this. Share this tab instead. So this is from August 6th, 1989. So by August, at that point in 1989, you had Poland had re-legalized the Solidarity movement as a political party, and they would run in elections, and they'd almost free elections in Poland. So that had started really what started it. And then, so a lot of East Germans were trying to get out of East Germany, and they they actually sought refuge in Hungary. So back then, you could travel in the Eastern Bloc from country to country. Most of people in the Eastern Bloc could. You couldn't go across the Iron Curtain into the West, most of them, but you could go from other countries within the Eastern Bloc. And a lot of them started a lot of Germans who couldn't cross the border into West Germany, they were trying to get out. They actually went to, Hungary to sort of because Hungary was liberalizing. Hungary had never really accepted communism in a lot of ways, and, so they just sort of found refuge there, and that was early August that started to happen. This was reported in the New York Times, and then you had by the 18th, you had, New York Times commenting how, "Wow, things are really developing in the Eastern Bloc with," and then this thing happened. Let's see, where are we? August 20th. This is it. This is what I spoke about at Gart. Picnic becomes chance for 200 to flee to West. So this is reports from Austria. August 19th, 1989. More than 200 East Germans used a symbolic picnic on the Austrian-Hungarian border today as a cover to flee to the West. A group of about 100 East Germans pushed through a partly open gate leading to a muddy track at the border fence and walked into Austria. This was amazing at the time. This is on page 14 of the New York Times. Smaller groups, estimated at more than 100 people, followed as Hungarian border guards turned a blind eye. They just marched straight through, said an Austrian border guard near the northeastern border village. Mostly young people, some with children, they fled Hungary with just the clothes they were wearing. More than 1,000 East Germans have escaped through Hungary in the last 2 weeks. The exodus has soured relations between the Germanies and embarrassed reform-minded Hungary. The picnic, called Tear It Down and Take It With You, had been planned as a celebration of European unity. European unity. There's a key phrase to keep in mind about the Hungarian elections. So I'm going to help you understand what happened in Hungary in the elections, because I think I have a good beat on it. Visitors from Austria and Hungary were encouraged to clip bits of barbed wire as souvenirs from the border fence. Hungary is dismantling. Hundreds of Austrians arriving for the event stared in amazement as the East Germans coming towards them. So that was on the 19th of August, 1989. Within 3 months, less than 3 months later, the Berlin Wall has been torn down. So just an incredible series of events. But anyway, I talked more about the web started that same, and how the web took like 10, 20 years to really become what we know it. And my point was that AI, because I was talking about AI, is happening much quicker and it's a much bigger blur. And that was the whole point of that story. But for some reason, I wanted to talk about Hungary. I didn't know that very day elections were happening in Hungary, and that they were big elections. So let's see, what do we got here? So we had the prime minister of Hungary was a man named Viktor Orban, who's almost my same age. So he was in college while this was happening. So here's the story. Here's the perspective I want to give you, is that Hungary to me is a very special nation. Hungarians are very special people to me. I don't have any Hungarian background, but 4 years before all that event, with the picnic and all that, 4 years before that, I visited Hungary. And that was when I was in Europe for the first time. And I went to Europe during a time I was dropped out of college. And all of my friends, they were doing study abroad. They were traveling around Europe on their train passes after being in some university or another in various part of Europe. And it was a thing to do. And that was just not something that I was going to ever be able to do, even if I was in college. It's like pay for a study abroad. That was just, my parents just didn't have the financial background to do that for me. They would have loved to it, but I knew, it was just not going to happen. But I didn't want to be left out. I didn't want to be left out on anything when I was a kid. So when I was young, and so I got a job. It's a crazy job. I could tell about that sometime. But and I earned some money. Spring of 1985, earned enough to buy some equipment, buy a plane ticket to to Europe and back, to Paris and back. I had a friend in Paris I could stay with who was there on a year-long study program, and, but then I was just gonna travel around the continent with my backpack by myself, under my own steam, with my own money. I went there with so little money. If I told you how much money I had in my pocket, you wouldn't even, but for the whole summer, I had $800 for the whole summer in cash, and then for some reason, Citibank decided to send me a credit card 1 week before I left. I got in the mail a credit card just sent to me, like, by divine providence with an $1,100 credit limit, and I used it all up when I was in Europe. So I had $1,900 to last me the entire summer, which I made it last the entire summer. I came back with $7 in my pocket when I came back to Colorado, $7 US dollars. And it was the greatest time of my life. I was 20 years old. But the point one of the places I really wanted to go to was Hungary. I really wanted to my friends, they were all in these nice places in Western Europe and their colleges, and it's like, "I'm gonna go behind the Iron Curtain. I'm gonna go there." And I really loved it. And the first place I went to behind the Iron Curtain was Hungary. And I crossed the border. It was the 4th of July, and I had some balloons with me for reasons that too long to explain. And, uh, and I had tied some red, white, and blue balloons to my backpack, and I was with a bunch of British guys who were backpacking around too on their Interrail. That was like the European version of the Eurail. And, I didn't have a train pass. I just had tickets that I was buying, on the cheap youth tickets. And, so we were both on our way to Budapest, and I was so excited because it's like, "We're going behind the Iron Curtain. This is so exciting." So this was, July 4th, 1985, and we got into Budapest, and we got off the train. It was this wonderful old station. It's like, "Here we are in Budapest." And, and this woman walked right up to us as a group. I was with and said, "Do you need a hostel?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." We didn't have any plans. We didn't have any place to stay. It's something you did when you were 20. You just rolled into town and took what opportunities were there, right? And if you had to wind up sleeping out on the sidewalk, well, that's what you did. And I did that sometimes, but not in Budapest. This woman was like, "Oh," it said, it was $2 a night for a hostel, she said, for each of us. And what it was her apartment. She took us back to this apartment. So this old woman, probably 50s, maybe, old when you're 20, right? And communism takes a toll on people. So she probably looked older than she would if she lived in the West. And she took us back to this apartment and had these stairs. It was like a pre-war apartment in downtown Budapest by the river. I and we went up these broad stairs, up flights, up to her apartment, and there it was, this old, and we each got a bed, and it was basically $2 a night. And both of us we all stayed there a couple nights, explored the city a little bit. But then I was gonna go out and I had set up with some friends of my grandmother. Again, a long story. My grandmother in Iowa, she had some friends at her church that had escaped Hungary during the revolution of 1956, and actually was on my way to visit them. I'd written to them and arranged to go stay with them, and they lived way out in the part of Hungary that was away from Budapest, a place called Takai, which is actually a little wine growing region. So I bought a ticket. I was gonna go out and visit them, and what happened, this is one of those things that just happens in life. I was on the train. I was sitting in a booth by myself. There I am, young American with my backpack, and this guy sits down. He's got white hair, I don't know, 50s maybe, not too old, mustache, looked really Hungarian. He sits down next to me, and he's like, he strikes up a conversation, and we try to, because he's Hungarian, and he only speaks Hungarian and a little bit of German, and I speak almost no German at the time, just a few words, and I don't speak any Hungarian, but I do have a phrase book. I had the Berlitz phrase book. So we're trying to make conversation with each other, and he's so excited to meet me, which was so the way it was back then. If you could travel in the Eastern Bloc as an American, people were always so excited to meet you. It was so much fun. And, so I don't quite how I tried to explain to him I'm on this way to this Takai. He knew Takai. We were actually gonna change trains near there. He says he basically, and I don't know how he communicated this. in Hungarian to me. But he's like, "Come and stay with come and stay with me and my family." Just and again, somehow I understood this conversation, and I was like, "Okay, I'm on this way to this other place, but I guess it can wait." The plans were sort of vague. I didn't have an exact date I was gonna arrive there. So I decided I'll go with this guy. So we take the train, we change trains to a smaller train, and we're out in the part of Hungary that's way up by the Ukrainian border, which was then the Soviet Union. And, and it's very rural, and Hungary is very flat. It looks like the Midwest. And we get off the train, and I follow him. We get in a cab. There's a cab there. We get in the little Eastern European car cabs, and we drive it, and we go to his house, and it's this farm in this tiny little hamlet, and his family's there, and his wife's there. She looked maybe in 40s, maybe, and his son's wife, who were not much older than me. They all lived there, and it was this little house. Now, they did have electricity. They even had TV, Hungarian TV, but they didn't have running water. The water had to come from a well, and they had a rabbit hutch out back, and they had the little plot of land that they farmed. And that was their life. And so there's no outside contact with them. Nobody knew, where I was. I was there totally, off I was totally off the any kind of thing there. And so there I am with these Hungarians, and all of them only speak Hungarian, and I spoke no Hungarian, except I had this phrase, Berlitz phrase book, and boy, did we use that. 'Cause I stayed there 2 weeks. They almost wouldn't let me go. They were like, just I stayed there 2 weeks with them. And they sort of I sort of became a part of their life. So I wound up having this little experience on a Hungarian farm in 1985 and meeting these people and meeting their whole village. We'd go out and drink at the bar, and we go to the bar, and there was just one kind of beer there. It came in these big bottles that were they looked like hand grenades. And, I don't even know if they had a label on them. Yeah, they had a label, but it was all these socialist labels were always so plain. And, and I got to meet his friends, and, uh, and we'd have discussions trying to use the phrase book, trying to have a conversation. And I said I felt like there's an old episode of MASH. You remember the TV series MASH? There's an episode where Hawkeye, the main doctor character, Alan Alda, he gets, he's driving his Jeep through Korea, and he gets hit by a shell or something like that, and he winds up being stuck with his Korean family, and, they don't speak any English, and he doesn't speak any Korean, so the whole episode is him just, going around talking in a monologue and trying to understand people and commenting on it. It's that's how it felt, except this was with Hungarians. And, so I stayed with them 2 weeks. It was so hard to they I probably could have stayed there forever and just, married a local girl and lived there, become a Hungarian peasant. It was only 4 years before the Berlin Wall came down. And Hungary wasn't so bad even then. They had food. They had food in Hungary. They didn't have it in a lot of other Hungary was pretty well off by socialist standards. But I got to know the Hungarians. I got to know them as a people, and I picked up my ear for the language a little bit. They taught me some of the language over the couple weeks, and, watched TV with them, went mushroom hunting with them, fed their rabbits and stuff. It was just a great experience. I just loved it. Loved it. And, but I got to know the Hungarian people through them, and the people I found there were just a great people. So much spirit that it was so obvious that socialism, communism had not crushed them. On the train when I was on my way there, the gentleman that I was sitting next to, this guy, his name was Tóth Gábor, which is it's like John Smith in Hungary. So Tóth in Hungary, you put the last name first, so the last name was Tóth, which is actually the last name of the people I was gonna go visit in the wine growing region that were connected to my friend of my grandmother. And, so that's like Smith and Tóth, T-O-T-H. Tóth Gábor. Gábor is his first name, Gabi, you know, and so I just like, this is my second home. I have a Hungarian soul now, and so they're special people to me. I never saw them again. I did go back to Budapest a couple times, just passing through. I never got back to that village. I did write them after that. I don't know whatever became of them, but I, they were 4 years away from their entire world being turned upside down. And I'll tell you something. So I'll tell you something. Then this has to do with these elections here. So these elections, Orban's defeat. So Viktor Orban was the prime minister of Hungary for the last 16 years, and he's right wing, right? And so I think I understand the Hungarians a little bit. So what I'll tell you a little this about the Hungarians is that when the wall came down in 1989, and then I came back to Budapest in 1994, and by then Budapest felt like a completely different city, because I knew this about the Hungarians, that they wanted to be a part of Europe. They felt that they had been cheated out. They felt like they were really a Western European country that was trapped behind the Iron Curtain, and that they um they were denied because oh, we're with Austria. Austria got to be outside the Iron Curtain. We should be too. They really felt that way. So when the Iron Curtain came down finally, when the Berlin Wall and the whole Iron Curtain ended and the Eastern Bloc, the Hungarians went crazy making up for lost time to reintegrate themselves into Europe. So what happened in Hungary recently? You need to keep that in mind. The Hungarians have always wanted to be a part of Europe. And I think this is the key to understand these elections. Because after Gart, I was on the plane home, and there was this notice that Orban had been defeated. So Orban is a close ally of Trump. He's right wing. He has a stance that's fairly pro-Russian. That's probably what did him in, actually. And very much against Hungarian participation in the Ukrainian war. And also, he has been instrumental, and this is key. This is why a lot of people despaired when Orban lost. He has been key to holding the line on migrants coming into Hungary. Even though Hungary is part of the EU, and the EU wants all of its countries to accept all of these migrants from the Middle East and Africa that have made it so that you can't walk through the cities in Italy or France without the migrant population making the city a different experience than it was before. Let's just say that, and making life miserable for people, and really changing, especially women, and that transforming the character of Western Europe radically, and especially in the big cities. Doesn't mean you still can't have a good time there, or that people don't have a good time there, but it's really has changed the character of the big cities of Western Europe. Budapest, on the other hand, has been one of those places that's remained free of all that. You go to Budapest, and the people go there now specifically to see Europe as it used to be, which is Europeans, a city full of Europeans. And in Hungary, this is particularly important because there's only 9 million Hungarians. They only live in one country and little bit in nearby countries. There's only 9 million of them. And they're very conscious of their nationhood. So Orban really was this nationalist figure who represented for a lot of people not just Hungarian nationhood and independence from the EU, even though they're part of the EU, but independence from it. But this idea of preserving Hungary's national character, its ethnicity, as a homeland for the Hungarians. And what people feared, I saw the tweet on the way home from Gart. People were blackpilling like crazy because Orban got defeated soundly by the opposition. So what did that mean? That's like leftists, right? And pro-EU, pro-Europe party. And if you saw the rallies when Orban that in Budapest, the night he was elected, this joy of these crowds chanting, Europe, Europe, Europe. And it seemed that the first reaction a lot of people had was that the new guy, the opposition, who got overwhelmingly elected with a majority to be able to change the Hungarian constitution, was going to basically put an end to Hungarian nationhood. One of the last countries in Europe to hold out against migrants, being, the idea that the white population of the country really needs to be diluted down, that there's something wrong with having an ethnically homogenous Hungarian state or an Irish state. There's something wrong with that. And that needs to be diluted down with Africans, with Middle Easterners brought into the country to dilute it, to bring diversity. It's like Europe is so diverse in its nations, but then to have to, when you dilute them down, it actually makes Europe less diverse because all the countries have the same sort of multicultural mixture. So it's like, is Hungary still going to be Hungary? And it made a lot of people anxious and sad on Sunday when they heard this. Now, when I heard this, I thought, well, maybe there's more to the story. And there is. There's a lot more to the story. And I think this is the key to understanding the future of Europe, is these Hungarian elections. And it fits right into the Trump program of why Trump is succeeding and continues to succeed. So let's just read this article a little bit. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban was seen for years as a master of tilting the electoral playing field in his favor to remain in power. Okay, so they're doing this. They're saying, oh, he was elected in a democratic thing, but it was a populist thing. They do this with Trump too. It's only democracy in action when their side wins, right? So this is NPR. On Sunday, his carefully crafted strategy finally failed. So basically, history caught up with Orban. His opponent, Peter Magyar. So that's how you say the name, by the way. Magyar. His name, Peter Magyar. Magyar literally means Hungarian. So his name, the guy who won, literally his name is Peter Hungarian. Peter Magyar. So you say the G like a D in Hungarian. And you talk sort of like this. Peter Magyar. They would, that's the. I have an ear for Hungarian, like I said. I got to. A former Orban loyalist. So here's we get into little things. You think, oh, a leftist got elected. It's like the leftist party when Keir Starmer got elected in Britain. It's going to be all about immigration, all about bringing in as many migrants as possible to dilute down the population. Because Hungary could go back to being communist. It could go back to being socialist. And 20 years could go by and it would still be Hungary. But if you replace the people, it's not Hungary anymore. And Hungary is a 1,000-year-old nation in Europe. And to get rid of a 1,000-year-old nation through basically diverting it down, because the birth rate is not very. They've tried to keep the birth rate up under Orban, and it's succeeded a little bit. But really, the future of Europe is really problematic, right? With the idea of who is going to be European. So his opponent, a former Orban loyalist, ran a campaign focused on Hungary's economic problems. So really is economics, government corruption, and getting rid of the prime minister himself. So the guy was in office 16 years. Okay. Important to keep that in mind. The record turnout overwhelmed the measures Orban had taken over the years to preserve power. So that's always that's the American press story is he only got reelected because he corrupted the system. That's what they do that with Trump. Trump cheated, and when you hear how did Trump cheat? Well, he put out disinformation. Like that's a little bit different than ballot stuffing. Hungarian American experts here in the U.S. say Orban's loss has lessons for President Trump about the resiliency of democracy. So when the left wins, it's democracy. And when the right wins, it's populism, which is somehow a corruption of democracy, right? You can rewrite the Constitution, you can capture public media, you can gerrymander a local election, but as long as people still enjoy the freedom to vote and vote for whoever they want to, these systems can be reversed under the right circumstances. So again, it's corruption and fascism when the right wins elections, and that has to be democracy is restored when then the left wins elections. So, right. So that's this is the American press line on Hungary. But the reality of what's happened in Hungary is a little bit different and a little bit more interesting. So my understanding of it is this. I don't know if I have any articles pulled up about this. And this made me much happier when I read. So Peter Magyar wins, Trump ally Viktor Orban. So the left in the U.S. is really excited because it was a Trump ally, Orban, one of the Trump's staunchest allies in Europe, has been defeated, and oh, we love that. The thing is, though, when you read the story, it turns out that the guy who won, Peter Magyar, so he's a much younger chap. So Obama hails Hungary's election results as victory for democracy. Because again, when the left wins, it's a victory for democracy. When the right wins, it's a defeat for democracy. You see, because the idea in the left is that people never really are on the side of the right wing stuff. They have to be tricked into voting for the right wing. Their heart, the true heart of the people, is always with the left, with the Democrats. That's why we just need to make sure everybody votes, and it's like such bullshit. It's such bullshit. Here's the guy who won, Peter Magyar. So much younger chap. So here's the thing, though. See, he's the opposition. But the opposition, here's the key. Here's the key to understanding it, which reframes this entire thing and changes the entire perception of what's going on in Europe and the world in the midst of what Trump is doing, is that he was a member of Orban's party until recently. He left to become opposition, and he ran against Orban. And he ran mostly on economic issues and also about backing away from Moscow and more towards Europe. Like I said, what did I say? Hungarians want to be a part of Europe. That's been a big drive of theirs. So they see themselves as Europeans. It's very important for the Hungarians to see themselves as part of Europe. So there was a pent-up frustration there that I could see built up against Orban that led to his defeat. But that's not the worst thing. Unless they were going to hand their sovereignty over to the European Union, which they're not. In fact, this guy, the new guy, so Magyar, he resigned. He was an Orban ally until recently. In fact, his position on some things was to the right of Orban, in particular on what? On immigration. So he's actually he wants stricter border controls and even fewer migrants admitted than Orban. And during his campaign, he traveled around the country with a Hungarian flag, like on a pickup truck, campaigning and basically saying, I am pro-Hungarian. I'm like Hungary first, which that's what Trump always, America first, but every country should be itself first. France should be France first. Britain should be Britain first. Germany should be Germany first. Hungary should be Hungary first. This is the guy. So he's young, and it's like, the Hungarians, they wanted a fresh face. They wanted some youth. They maybe wanted to back away from Moscow. That's not the worst thing. And the Ukrainian war, I think that's going to be a thing of the past soon anyway. I think it's going to be wrapped up in what Trump is doing. I think it's going to be somehow wrapped up. I don't think it's going to be a big thing after a while. So, and like I said, I don't really care if Hungarians go back to being socialists in their economics, so long as they're still Hungarian, so long as it's still Hungary, so long as the Hungarian people survive as a people with their nation. And this guy, the new guy, seems like now who knows, but seems like he's totally committed to that. So what does that tell us? That tells us, all this bullshit coming from the American press, defeat of right-wing populism and all that. Well, okay, it's like this. I compare it to this. Suppose that J.D. Vance resigned from Trump. He resigned as VP, or he doesn't resign as VP, but he breaks with Donald Trump, and he runs in 2028. He's probably going to do that anyway. This isn't the greatest analogy, but bear with me. See if you understand this. But he ran sort of as Trump's opposition. Let's say Trump runs again in 2028. And J.D. Vance breaks with him and runs against Trump as his opposition. But on an economic populist thing, like, maybe he adopts some democratic sort of lefty type economic proposals, maybe like universal basic income, things like that the Democrats might, health insurance, things that Trump isn't emphasizing. Let's say J.D. Vance did that, but he's still really strong on the border and still commits to deporting people through ICE. Would that be the worst thing in the world to happen? I don't think so. I could live with that. What do we fear about the Democrats? What's the big thing? Is that they'll get back in power and basically tear down the wall, let in everybody who wants to come in. And then I would think, too, that they would probably track down everybody who's been deported by ICE, and they would fly them back in the country and give them reparations to boot. That's what the Democrats would do, seems like they would do, unless they figured out that that's a losing play. But if they got back into power, that's what we would fear they would do. And that's what people feared was going to happen with Hungary. And it looks like that's not going to happen. It looks like the leftward lurch of the Hungarian people within Europe has been all about economic issues. Now, maybe you don't like the economic issues, but these are the Hungarians. It's their business to figure out what to do. But they're very much still committed to remaining Hungarian and keeping their country intact and their nation intact. And I think that's a very good sign for Europe, because it tells you that what's happening with Europe, with the reaction to the flooding Europe with migrants, is something that has staying power even under electoral back and forth of European politics. That the people of Europe are waking up. They're clearly waking up in Britain. They're clearly waking up in Ireland. And they're joining what Trump has started as this global revolt against the empire. We call it the British Empire, but let's just call it the empire. The empire. Because in some sense, it's also the American empire, too. We're just the muscle for it. We supply the soldiers to go out and die for the empire, is us. Because none of the other members of the empire have any armed forces left. We're the muscle. Britain supplies the financial apparatus. And the Vatican supplies also the banking apparatus, but also the whatever they're supplying. Because now Trump's at war with the Pope and the Vatican, too. It's really has started. The big event has started, I think. You can't deny that. And Hungary is a really good sign, I think, that the desire to keep the Europeans to keep their countries intact. Because if they lose it, they lose it. There's no more. There's no more Hungary. There's no more Ireland. But their desire to keep their countries intact has staying power despite normal left-right politics, which will go back and forth. The quote-unquote right will lose elections. The quote-unquote left will win elections. But if it doesn't matter from the standpoint of nationhood and destroying the nation by replacing the population, then the countries will survive. The countries will survive. And that to me changes everything. That is, I think, really good news. Now, so it could still turn out differently. I'm not saying that this is what Peter Magyar is going to be about, but he he seems to be saying all the right things and doing all the right things so far in a way that's really, really amazing. So I was glad I didn't completely black pill on the plane back home from Gart, because it was really tough to see that happening. And the nation I love so much, Hungary, a people of great spirit who suffered through communism. I mean, the guy I mentioned whose farm I stayed with back in 1985. So we were on the train together and we were having our primitive conversation. A lot of people in Eastern Europe, they insist that you must speak German. Oh, you're a Westerner. You must speak some German, right? I'm like, well, very little. That kind of conversation. We're trying to make ourselves known to each other. And I wanted to ask him about 1956, which is when Hungary originally revolted against the Soviet Union, revolted against Stalin. Said, we don't want to be a part of the communist bloc. We want to go our own way. And that was 1956. And there was then a brutal crackdown because Stalin sent his tanks across the border and invaded Hungary and propped up the government with his Stalinist puppets, and was really a brutal crackdown. And that was 1956. That's why the friend I mentioned my grandmother had a Hungarian friend who lived in Iowa and went to her church. That's when she left Hungary then in 1956 because of that. Some people got out. Some people didn't. So I wanted to ask this man about this. And so I wrote, this was what it was like. This was 1985 when Hungary was pretty liberalized by then. And I wrote on the window, there was dust on the train window, and I wrote 1956. And he looked at that and he just this expression of fear came over his face. And he sort of looked around and he reached up and rubbed it out with his hand. Because even though Hungary was pretty liberalized by 1985, he still weren't allowed really to talk about that. And they wanted to, though. The Hungarians wanted to. They wanted to be a part of Europe, and they still do. But they want to be Hungarians, and that's really encouraging. We need that. This idea, Hungary first. Hungary first doesn't necessarily mean being pro-Moscow like Orban. It doesn't mean being the kind of leader Orban was. I'm certain that Trump is going to have no problem getting along with the new guy, Peter Magyar. Very little is going to change. And if you want an example, look at Poland. 2 years ago, Poland elected a quote-unquote, went from a right-wing government to a quote-unquote left-wing government. And people feared that Poland, which is the other country in Europe that's really held the line against migrants. And I was in Poland 4 years ago, and I went down to the Baltic Sea with a friend. I have a good friend in Poland that I met in 1985, actually, not in Poland, but in Greece. And we went down to the beach in Gdansk, and just gonna make sure that the light went off of my camera. $2, Sleep State. Great show. Thank you, Sleep State. And there was a $1 Rumble rant from somebody. Keith O'Higgins. Matt, did your best friend Gart have the classic and innovative push-button transmission back when men could talk trannies and not be homophobic? It did not. It had an automatic transmission, as far as I remember. Slant 6 engine. Those wonderful Slant 6 Mopar engines. Just a peak of civilization. So thank you for the $1. Thank you, Keith. So I'm very excited about this. I think this is I think it's almost like a best case scenario for Hungary, is that they had a swing to a more pro-European, less Moscow-oriented, more economic, liberal, whatever, and yet they preserved the integrity of the stance of not just not following the European Union's desire to flood Europe with migrants and dilute the native populations of Europe, to dilute the wonderful diversity of languages and people of Europe, because it is a wonderful diversity. Europe's the most diverse place on earth is Europe. But they're making it less diverse by bringing in these migrants, because every country is going to be a stew of Pakistanis and Afghans and Moroccans and Syrians and Nigerians, and we all going to bring all those people together, put them in a big stew in every country, and it's all going to be the same stew. That's not diversity. That's the opposite of diversity. Diversity is the old Europe, when every country had its own language and its own currency and its own flavor of government and its own customs and its own national dress and its own traditions. That's diversity. That's what they want to wipe out. But they couldn't do it in Hungary, and they didn't do it in Poland, even though they got a quote unquote left-wing government, just like in Hungary. They supposedly the left wing won, but Poland is still Poland. They've actually, I think, they've tightened the migrant restrictions, because it doesn't work. This idea that you're supposed to flood Warsaw with Africans and make Poland, a multi-ethnic, multiracial nation is just not meant to happen. It's wrong. It's evil. I think it's evil what they're doing. And that Hungary and Poland now have both had elections where the right wing has quote unquote lost. And yet it looks like they're going to hold the line on this. That's probably the best case scenario when you think about it. So lots in motion, and a lot is very interesting happening. So I love the Hungarians. It's 7:23. We should think about wrapping up. And I just want to say thank you for everybody coming by tonight. Still see you, but camera froze. Okay. But you can hear me, I hope. Camera freeze. Oh, okay. Camera froze. Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt. Okay. So I guess the camera froze. Let me see if I can at the stage. Hello. Oh, no. Huh. Oh, well. Okay. So I'm just gonna what should I do here? Let's just do that. I guess we'll have to just stick it up there. So I'm going to send you guys over to, I'm going to raid only lands, and I will see you next week. Thank you to all for dropping by on this post-Gart discussion, and keep up the, don't get down. Great things are happening, and things are starting to make sense, and things are starting to come together. And I'm all of a sudden feeling a lot better than I was 2 weeks ago. Still got a little bit of bronchial stuff, but we're going to get over that. So, thank you all for dropping by. Love you all. And let's see. Okay. Raid. Hope to see you on OnlyLands. I wasn't sure I was going to join OnlyLands, but we'll go over there. So we do have one more sponsor. We got
in a quiet town at where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Jadriet's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the moistureless.
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within one day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
you boys at Badlands are so handsome.
She saw potential.
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
And she made her demand.
Shave them all off.
Or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
And you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beard. Because Madame Margie, the moistureless, is always watching.
All right. So, and we'll play it out. I'm going to play the close here. I'm so glad we had this time together. Just a little, let's do a few Just a few bars of Carol. We're on YouTube now, so I don't think this is. We played this the other day, and I didn't get a copyright strike, so. So see you all. I'm going to jump over there. We're going to hope the raid works here, and then I'll play the outro. Play the outro here. So see you all over in OnlyLands.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.
I'm feeling